Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is the Friday edition. We're already an hour into the transmission. 3 hours span out before us. I'm here live Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. The websites are Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. We're often imitated, but unfortunately never duplicated because we want more liberty lovers and freedom folks out there on the web. But a lot of folks are out there doing great work, and we appreciate that. And one of them is Bob Chapman. Also, they take the last 3 hours of the Friday show and replay it in the evening from 5 to 8 p.m. Central on XM, and that's up there on the XM schedule. So be sure and check that out. This will be re-airing on July 4th for 3 hours at XM, the second, third, and fourth hours. I have a history expert on the Founding Fathers, the Declaration of Independence, what the founders went through, how many of them were killed, their families were killed, they were put on starvation ships, the British invented concentration camps, Andrew Jackson's mother and brother were killed in a concentration camp. So we're always told to hate the French on 4th of July, and there's this Francophobe thing, instead of being a Francophile, and we're these Anglophiles in this country. Now, I got an English last name, Jones, Welch. And I love the British people. They're great folks. But let's not hate the French on 4th of July. Contrary to what they brainwash people, the French helped found this country. Now, I know in the brainwash neocon world, or Barack Obama's world, loving the United States, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution is bad. That's why with the Homeland Security documents that we broke, the MIAC report and the DHS reports, we broke those folks. Others took credit for it, but that's fine. Gun owners, veterans, conservatives, libertarians, we are the terrorists. Now, because the foreign offshore banks that have hijacked the United States, they are the real terrorists, ladies and gentlemen, and we're here to fight them and to expose them. We're going to have open phones throughout the next 3 hours to discuss how liberty is being trampled on, how our freedoms are being destroyed, how we're going from land of the free, home of the brave, to land of the cowards, home of the slaves, and how do we get that freedom and liberty back? And I want to go through a bunch of news items that are examples of this. But first, we need to get into the economy. Deteriorating by design. The globalists are on record engineering that. And we always have Bob Chapman joining us in the second hour on Fridays. He is the biggest private gold and silver broker out there. At one time had the biggest newsletter back during the 1980s. Retired for a while. Came back with the International Forecaster. He was also in military intelligence. And he's been fighting the New World Order and the globalists and the private Federal Reserve for more than 45 years. Bob Chapman, good to have you here with us today on the economy and a lot more as we race towards the anniversary of the birth of this country.
It's terrific. I love being here.
Okay, we're about to break in about a minute and a half, Bob, but tell us some of the most important latest financial news that you're going to be covering on the other side of this break.
Well, I think one of the things that we have to take notice of is the Madoff affair and how it's turned out. Of course, they gave 150 years to Madoff, which is ridiculous. But the key to this whole thing, and I've been told by my sources, it was a CIA Mossad operation in conjunction with Madoff, went on for many years. None of the money ever went to Madoff. It went in one door and out the other.
And by the way, you were the first to say that 3 or 4 months ago. Now that's leaked out a few places in mainstream media that obviously he didn't act alone. This was a money laundering operation.
That's correct. It wasn't actually in December before it happened. But anyway, the key to this whole thing is the Federal Reserve in New York and the Fed overall and the U.S. Treasury have copies of every wire that Madoff sent to offshore destinations. Most of the money went to Israel.
Stay there. And I want you to recap all that. Bob Chapman on the other side will look at the entire economy, the jobless rates, the inflation rate, where you see the economy going. But first we'll cover Madoff and the money laundering scam that dwarfs even Enron. It's all coming up. We'll talk about the carbon tax passing the House. Senator Kerry says it's going to pass the Senate. The home inspections are already beginning, but the states are fighting back.
This is Alex Jones. Have you heard of the Millionaire Patriot? Well, you should. He has a free handgun and 5 days of firearms training waiting for you. That's right. You can attend 5 days of world-class gun training at Front Sight Firearms Training Institute and secure a 30-state concealed weapons permit, all for pennies on the dollar. Plus, if you act fast, the Millionaire Patriot will give you a free Springfield Armory XD pistol in the caliber of your choice. I believe now is the time that you and your family need to be armed and trained to levels that exceed law enforcement and military standards. Front Sight provides such training without any boot camp mentality or drill instructor attitudes. This is real. Don't miss out. Secure a Front Sight defensive handgun course, plus a 30-state concealed weapons permit for pennies on the dollar, and get your free handgun. Go to frontsight.com today. That's FRONTSIGHT.com. Go to frontsight.com for your training and free gun.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Unlike a lot of other radio talk show hosts, we are here live on this July 3rd, 2009 edition. And I'll be back with the abbreviated Sunday show, 4 to 6 p.m., syndicated across the country. And again, they re-air 3 hours of the show on XM Radio, 5 to 8 p.m. And I'll give you that channel a little bit later at the bottom of the hour, so you can tune into that on the 4th of July. For the rest of the hour, Bob Chapman joins us. We're going to open the phones up. Of course, we don't screen your calls, so they'll be all over the map. Speaking of all over the map, we have calls from England, Australia, Washington, D.C., California, Ohio, you name it. One time I even got a call from McMurdo Weather Station in Antarctica on the bottom of the planet. Maybe we'll get one of those calls today. Toll-free number to join us, 1-800-259-9231. I know we've gotten a lot of new affiliates across the country, and I know that we have a lot of new listeners, so let me just explain to people. I'm not a left-winger. I'm not a right-winger. I'm a constitutionalist. They didn't have left-wing and right-wing in the days of 1776 when this country was founded. It was, are you for big government or small government? Are you for free market or a king? Do you like being controlled, or do you want freedom? Are you for keeping and bearing arms and not being a slave, or do you want to be an indentured servant? To me, it's a question of slavery versus abolition of slavery. I have sworn, as Thomas Jefferson did, eternal resistance against all forms of tyranny over man and the minds of man. And I am here to light bushfires in the minds of men and women everywhere. I have a special guest in the last hour today, a constitutional scholar, a historian, about what our founders went through. So that's coming up. But for the next 20 minutes or so, I want to go over the economy with Bob Chapman of the internationalforecaster.com. Again, our website's Infowars.com. Bob did in his newsletter actually back in December, before Madoff even got in trouble. He said Madoff and others are involved in these scams. There's no way they're actually making 15% every year and never having problems. Madoff was founder of the NASDAQ. It's Madoff criminals that basically run Wall Street. CIA was set up by them. They're now feeding what's left of the free market economy into it. $14.8 trillion has been stolen. They own both parties. They don't want H.R. 1207 to pass. It's right up at 250 co-sponsors right now in the House to audit the Federal Reserve that says it's above the law in all branches of government. How asinine is that? And so we're going to get into Madoff getting 150 years, saying he ran it all himself, when the Promise software and what the NSA does, they admit there's a record through the Securities and Exchange Commission of all this. So what's really behind the Madoff scam from the man who first said that Madoff was going to go down and that Madoff was an operative and it was a Mossad/CIA op? So, Bob Chapman, tell us what's happening there first.
Well, I think it's what I was trying to get to was that...
Yeah, recap, because some stations don't carry that first segment. A recap.
Right. What I was getting into is that the Fed and the Fed Reserve in New York, as well as in Washington, and the U.S. Treasury track every wire. So they know where all the money went, from what banks to what place. A lot of them were in offshore accounts. They know that. They know who owned them. So they know who did what. And there's no question. Now, none of this has come out. I mean, these people who are rigging this whole thing and throwing all the blame on Madoff, they got to be dumb. I mean, we're not that stupid. I mean, that's a simple thing that they do every day. So they knew who did what, and they know who was involved. I believe that probably Mr. Madoff will die within 2 years, perhaps even 6 months. But I don't think he'll die. I think they'll tell you he died, and he'll be shipped out someplace. That's what I think they're up to with him.
Well, that's the same thing with the witness protection program. They do this all the time, and even mainstream newspapers have reported in Latin America and Europe that Ken Lay is down in Paraguay where the Bushes bought those giant 50-plus thousand acre ranches. This is what black ops do continually. They take low-level special forces operatives by the thousands each year and stage their death. That's on record. So to say they wouldn't stage a Ken Lay or a Madoff's death later, or like a Jack Ruby, I mean, we know they do this.
You're right, and we have contacts in Montevideo who have told us the same thing.